Yeah, dude.
We're doing this?
Yeah, we're on.
Okay.
We're dialed in.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when that time when I was coming to see you, I was going through it, man. And you could tell, right?
Oh, yeah.
You could tell.
Yeah.
One of the things you kept asking me was, how old do you feel right now? And I kept saying 12-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And ever since those sessions, I've been thinking about that 12-year-old boy.
Okay.
So anything that comes up just in terms of something that I'm, hard for me to like get over, or I'm feeling anxiety or stressed out about it, I always relate it back to that 12-year-old.
Yeah. It's a trauma response usually. That's why you can say, I feel 12. It's because that part of you is being activated. So how old are you?
28.
So the 28, you're living a 28-year-old life, but you've been wounded in some sense. And so you'll go through life and something will trigger that wound. And then you'll feel 12. And then the game is to kind of try to understand what's happening in your 28-year-old life that's tied into what happened when you were 12. And that gives you some understanding. But I want to say this. It's like you don't choose who you're attracted to. And early on in adult life, people are drawn to partners who trigger whatever it is within them that needs to be triggered, that needs to be transcended and worked through, right? And you will unconsciously put yourself in that same situation over and over again until you learn whatever it is you need to learn, until you make the unconscious conscious, I would say. But it's more than that. It's you take what you learn and then you actually have to embody it and apply it to your life. And what's so cool is when people start to do that, they grow and evolve. And then what happens naturally is the people they're attracted to and who are attracted to them start to evolve as well. So that's how I kind of see what you were going through.
Right. Well, what I told you was I grew up with a lot of chaos around me in terms of relationships, just my family members going through their own relationship issues, and then me in my early 20s going through my own relationship issues, and me being used to that toxicity. And what you said was being used to someone that gets me confused or makes me feel confused.
Yeah.
Something about what you said, because it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, why do I keep going back to someone? Why am I
Didn't make logical sense.
It doesn't make any logical sense.
Yeah. And I think what happens a lot is we try and understand all our issues or our stuff through the lens of logic. And a lot of them are emotional. And so we're using the wrong tool. We take our logical mind and look at the situation. We go, what the fuck am I up to? But you have an unconscious, right? And you have an emotional world. And so there was something about that woman and that situation that logically made no sense, but emotionally you were drawn to. And there's this saying that says, you attach to what's familiar. Okay, and so early on in life especially, people don't necessarily attach to healthy partners. They attach to what's familiar, what they've been around, what their mom or dad is like. That makes sense,
Right.
Okay? And I think the reason for that is they have a map for it. They understand it. They know what to do with it. Okay? And so they'll be drawn towards someone like that, and they're comfortable with it, or maybe better yet, they're comfortable in that discomfort.
Is it as simple as just saying you don't know what you don't know, and you know what you know?
I think we have a conscious and an unconscious, right? And you can't become aware of your unconscious until you fuck up or until you've been hurt. I think that's the process by which people become more conscious, okay? So let's say you're drawn to the hot girl, and the hot girl is the girl who's all over. The hot girl is the girl you couldn't get in high school or in grade 7, the popular girl, the cheerleader, these sorts of things. And because you couldn't get her unconsciously in your adult life, you now want to get her. You want to possess her. You want to prove something. That 12-year-old little Mo isn't the schmuck that he felt like he was, right? And you don't think this. You don't understand this. You're just acting it out. And so you're drawn to that. Remember, you don't choose who you're attracted to. Like a magnet, you're just pulled towards her. And then you go and let's say you get that girl. And it's a disaster.
Which what happened
as
to
I
me,
could have
yes.
predicted. It's an absolute disaster.
Oh my.
But okay, you lick your wounds, whatever. Let's say you go do it again. A different hot girl. And it's a disaster again. And you go and do the same thing and boom, you get burnt again, right? And what happens is after enough pain, after enough, playing out the same pattern, people start to become conscious of that. They go, what am I doing here? what the hell's going on? Why do I keep putting myself in this situation? And that's a clue. And so they start to become reflective and they start to understand themselves more. And at first they still want the hot girl, but now because they're conscious of it, they can start to make different decisions. So let's say that girl texts you out of the blue and you look at it and you go, this is trouble. This is absolute trouble. I know this is a trap, but part of you wants to respond and whatnot. And so you have a decision to make in that moment, right? You still want her, but your self-awareness, your conscious mind can make a different decision. That's what I was talking about earlier, about actually embodying the lessons you learn, okay? And so when you start to make decisions that are more aligned with what you actually want and who you actually want to be, that's when people start to change. I don't think people change that much by listening to a podcast or reading a book or seeing some quote on Instagram. It's helpful, but I think people really start to change through experience and making different conscious choices in their day-to-day life.
You wouldn't recommend someone going through that pain, but...
Yes, I would.
Would
I
you?
really would,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm kind of kidding when I say that, but I think it's unavoidable. Like, I think people have a destiny. That word's a little too philosophical or romantic or whatnot. But again, you don't choose who you're attracted to. It's like you were drawn to her. You couldn't not be drawn to her if you tried. And so you had to go down that path. And you can look at it and go, oh, I'm toxic. Or, oh, I have mommy or daddy issues. Or, oh, my trauma. And all of that's somewhat true. But I would look at it and say you have a destiny. And you had to go down that path because there was something for you to learn on that path. And the only way you're going to grow and evolve is by going down that path and stumbling on it and learning whatever there is to learn.
How many times does a guy go through that pattern until they figure out, like,
Change is different for everyone.
is there like an average? Is there a stat or a...
Probably, but I couldn't give it to you.
You couldn't give...
Yeah.
What do you think it is? I mean, for your clients and from what you see, men and women.
Yeah.
Also, do you think women go through the same process?
Yeah, definitely. I think a pattern that's common is, I think, a people-pleasing woman who has troubles with boundaries and assertiveness and might present as confident and be very attractive, but deep down is very insecure, is typically drawn to some narcissistic asshole guy who will charm her and then will kind of, who will make all her decisions for her kind of thing, who will bully her sort of thing. And so her destiny or her path is to go link up with that guy and have it be a disaster and get hurt by him and have him cheat on her and so on and so forth kind of thing until she learns self-love and self-respect. And as she's learning those things, there will still be a part of her that wants that guy. But she'll reach a point where even though a part of her wants him, she's wise enough now to make the choice not to be with him. And that's where things start to change, right? So there's the saying, nice guys finish last. I don't believe that in the slightest. But what I do believe is there's a lot of people, there's a lot of women, a lot of men who early on in their love life aren't attracted to nice guys or nice girls, the person who's the right fit for them sort of thing. There's a process they have to go through. So they have to spend their 20s chasing around the asshole narcissist or the hot girl who's emotionally unavailable and will show them some attention, but deep down doesn't actually really like them that much. And they know it. And then they'll get to the other side of that.
Right.
And then they'll find someone who's actually a good fit for them and they can build a life with. But it seems to be there's this period, and for some people it might be a couple years, some people might be a decade, where you have to stumble around and fuck up in order to learn what exactly your issues, for lack of a better term, are.
Yeah, dude. I mean, for some it might be their whole 20s and then even early 30s. And when they get to 40, it's like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
And is that a shame for someone to go through that much? I mean, 40 is not that old, but for them to go through their whole 20s, early 30s, and then mid 30s to 40, then they start to figure out, oh, well, all this time I was...
You can look at it that way. In some sense, it is a shame, but this is kind of how I view life. I think we're supposed to evolve and grow, and I don't think we do it through meditation, and I meditate. I believe in meditation, but what I mean is I think we do it by getting our hands dirty. And so we have to go out in the world and participate in our life, and that's going to show us where we're stuck, where we're unconscious, where our childhood is still affecting us, where getting bullied in grade 7 is still a part of us today. And it's through that stuff that it's kind of like a mirror that shows us where we're actually at, and then that gives us the opportunity to evolve, you know. So I don't think there's any other way to do it.
Right. You know, man, since I came in for those sessions and we talked about my inner child and my 12-year-old Mo, I don't think I'll ever get over it per se, quote unquote get over it. I don't think there's a getting over that 12-year-old that went through those things that I told you about. But I think I'm just going to be able to sit with it comfortably, with that 12-year-old Mo sitting in me right now.
12-year-old Mo started this podcast. 12-year-old Mo was motivated, and you probably had other motivations and whatnot, right? And so 12-year-old Mo isn't this awful, evil part of yourself that's trying to destroy your life. It's not a cancerous tumor that needs to be ripped out of you. It's a wounded part that had certain childhood experiences that affected you. And we all have that. Now, your experiences are different than mine, although there might be some overlap. But 12-year-old Mo is the one who goes, I don't feel good about myself. In some ways I do, but in some ways I don't. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. What can I do? I'm going to start a podcast, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
I'm going to get a nose piercing.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It is.
And then you transcend that. And then the podcast is no longer about proving to the hot girl who rejected you that you're actually a stud. It becomes its own thing, right? And next thing you know, you have a guest who was on with Theo Vaughn, and all these good, beautiful things emerge out of that, right? And so you need that part of you. But most people are too busy trying to destroy that part of themselves because it doesn't fit with the image of who they want to be, right? I have a pouty little 9-year-old boy in here, and he allowed me to become a therapist. And now I have a wonderful life because of that. The 9-year-old screwed up a couple relationships in the past, so he's not perfect by any means. But you get what I'm saying? Yeah.
One thing you told me in one of our sessions that I keep repeating in my mind, and it resonates with me a lot, is it was just so simple. I was talking about sometimes, you know, when I'm at the gym, I think this was the example I gave you. I'm at the gym and there's a beautiful woman over there and I feel like I want to go talk to her, or I'm in a bar or somewhere where I have the opportunity to go conversate with a woman and I just don't do it. Yeah. There's something in me that just holds me back, fear, nervousness, whatever. And then after that, I just beat myself up over it. And you just said, it's okay. Just give yourself some grace. It's not, you don't have to be mad at yourself for not doing it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so simple. It's so simple, man. But ever since then, I mean, there's been times where I see a beautiful woman and I have this urge to go say something, but I just don't do it. I don't know what it is. I just don't do it.
3 times in my life, I think.
You've approached every single woman?
No, I said I think I've done it like 3 times.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
You know, Larry, my therapist, and you had him on. I love Larry. So he's been doing therapy for 55 years. I love cats, by the way. This thing's shedding like crazy. He said his biggest takeaway in 55 years of working with countless people is that people need to support themselves more. Because people are their own worst enemies. They have a voice in their head that's hypercritical. And until they work on that, they're not going to make any progress whatsoever. And that sounds very simple, and it is. And it can't sound a little corny or cliche or whatnot, but he's done therapy for 55 years, and his number one takeaway is people need to be nicer to themselves. Doesn't mean you sit around telling yourself you're perfect, you're flawed, you got lots to work on, so do I. But he says that voice in your head that's giving you shit because you don't go smoothly approach every single beautiful woman you see, and they're just floored by how charming and attractive you are. That voice that's telling you that nonsense, it's got to calm down. And until it does, you're not going to become who you want to become, and you're not going to feel good about yourself.
How do you calm it down?
By noticing when it's not calmed down, I would say. Okay, so I don't really know how to calm it down, but you can be aware of it. You can go, holy shit, I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
This is that thing I talked about in therapy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it right now. So you're no longer reflecting on it. You're catching it in the moment. And then it's like your consciousness kind of splits in two. So here's the part of you criticizing yourself, the inner critic, and here's the rest of you, just pure consciousness or awareness, observing the fact that you're doing it. And the more you become that awareness, this is still happening, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not as powerful, it's not as real. So you become identified with the observation of your own inner critic as opposed to becoming identified with the inner critic. When you're going, yeah, I am a pussy. Oh, fuck, yeah, I should have. Oh, why do you always do that? You're becoming the critic. You can have those same thought patterns. Those thoughts can be going through your head, but you can also just be sitting there laughing at yourself. Not mocking yourself, but just going, holy shit, I am being hard on myself right now.
Yeah. Or just saying, yeah, I got nervous and I didn't go and approach her.
Yeah, Larry
Okay.
also told me this. He said something funny. He said, when I see a beautiful woman, my IQ drops 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so beautiful women have been intimidating men for a very long time. It's not something that's specific to you, or it's not something that's new since social media started or anything like that, right? We were having this conversation before we started recording.
Mm.
I don't think a lot of women realize how much power they have over men, or how, I don't think a lot of women realize how insecure men are. Actually, that might not be true. I think women are pretty aware of that. But, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're aware of it or not.
And what do you see with that with your women clients? Are they genuinely surprised by the fact that men are so insecure, or they don't understand why they're so insecure and intimidated by them? Or
I think to deal with their insecurity, men go into performance mode. Okay, so they have a date with a woman or they're in a relationship and they think, shit, I'm not good enough, or shit, she's so beautiful. Okay, I have to be somebody. I have to be this, I have to be that kind of thing. And then they go into performance mode, and I think it creeps women out. Or women get a feeling of, this guy's kind of weird or something like that, because they're not actually seeing them as they are. They're not interacting with a human being. They're interacting with a goddess. They've given them goddess status, and they're also trying to manipulate the conversation. So when I'm talking to you right now, I'm not trying to manipulate it. I want this to go well, and I want people to listen to this and think I'm smart and blah, blah, blah. But I don't have an agenda, so I can just look at you and be responsive to what we're talking about. I think a lot of men, when they're talking to beautiful women, is they go, okay, I need her to think this about me. I need her to be attracted to me. I need her to like me. And so they start to, one, get in their own head, but then craft their language in a way in which they're trying to get this other human being to feel something or think something. And I think that's where they get lost. And the work is to just actually look at the human being in front of you and pay attention to them and respond like you would anyone else.
right.
So men go into performance mode because they don't feel like they're good enough. And then they become inauthentic, or they become creepy, or something just starts to feel off.
It becomes awkward. Some of the energy's weird. The energy's off. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, but sometimes you blame us, man, because some women are just, it's,
Go on.
I mean, I hung out with someone yesterday, and I went and picked her up from her car, and when she came out of the car, I said to myself, "Oh my goodness!" That actually like played in my head.
Yeah.
But I've been on enough dates. I'm old enough. I've had enough experience to be able to compose myself.
Yeah.
But I could see how someone that doesn't have that experience or has those extreme insecurities, for that, oh my goodness, she is a knockout.
Oh yeah.
Could just absolutely take over them.
Yeah.
The-
Yeah.
But for me, I could calm myself down
Yeah.
because she was, and if she listens to this, she knows I'm talking about her.
Yeah.
And I told, but you know, one thing I actually told her later on, during the day, I said, listen, when this is when we were comfortable with each other, and I could say these things. I felt like it was the right moment. I told her, I said, when you got out of the car, I told myself, oh my goodness. I actually played that in my head, and She was like, oh, like that's
But what's cool is if you acknowledge your insecurity, it's kind of like, as long as you do it, it's not a neurotic, oh my God, you're being more secure in yourself. As soon as you say, hey, I'm very attracted to you and a little bit intimidated, it's showing a level of comfort with that experience, right? With being a bit insecure or a bit intimidated. So it's not this like pathetic, awful thing. As long as you're not saying it to manipulate the conversation some way. If it's just a natural kind of funny laughing at yourself, not mocking yourself, but acknowledging that as soon as you saw her, you were blown away by how beautiful she was and your heart started racing. You thought, oh, fuck, here we go. You're showing a level of security in acknowledging that.
Right.
Yeah.
On that point, dude, do you think men are becoming more vulnerable and showing their emotions? Because you recently posted a clip where you were talking about men aren't actually biologically designed to not be as emotional.
That's my theory, Lisa. I have no idea whether that's true or not. But
what are your thoughts on just men being emotional and being more vulnerable? Do you think it is still an issue? I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna ask you if it is still an issue, but because it is. But
so I work with men and women, and I'd say the most glaring difference between the two is emotional repression. Men are way more emotionally repressed than women are. It would be funny if it was, or it would be comical if it wasn't so sad, but it's absolutely incredible to work with the two genders and to see how much more repressed men are. When you work typically when I work with a female client, they'll come in and they'll get right to it. They'll start talking about whatever they're struggling with. A breakup, my heart's broken, they start crying, away we go. A man comes into therapy and he's thinking, is this guy going to think I'm a pussy? Okay, so he typically spends a couple sessions sussing me out, and he'll kind of stick his toe in the water of what he's struggling with. But that's always in the room. I shouldn't say always, but that's usually in the room. It's, I'm in pain, I'm sad, I have a broken heart or something like that, but there's another guy sitting right there and I can't let him think I'm a pussy. So I have to find a way to talk about this stuff without him thinking I'm weak. It's funny, I like it. I don't like what I would talk about, I like the cat.
Yeah. But dude, I came in the first time I got right to it.
Yeah, no.
But what's the difference between me though? I don't, because for me, I'll tell you personally, if I was to keep it in and not talk about it, it's going to eat me alive.
It's hard to talk about psychology and men and women and therapy without making huge generalizations. So everything I say, I can give you countless exceptions, and you were an exception to that, right? And maybe it has to do with the podcast and you're getting used to being vulnerable. I work with a lot of people, men and women, who grew up in a family in which you don't talk about anything. And so they have a borderline panic attack just coming to therapy because they're coming to this environment where it's expected that they start to talk about this shit. And they've been implicitly or explicitly taught that we don't talk about these things. And so there's this part of them that starts freaking out, sort of thing. So it could be that, could be the podcast and that you're getting used to talking about all this stuff. It could be that you're in so much pain that it trumped everything else. That happens. People will talk when the pain gets to a point where they can't not talk.
That's what I mean. It got to the point where even if you were thinking I'm a pussy, I don't care.
Yeah, right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you gave me great advice, you helped me out, you guided me through that. If I left your place and you thought I was a pussy, I don't care.
But that's good. And I would say the first time I met you, you wouldn't have been able to do that. Like, I think social anxiety is, Jesus Christ. Social anxiety is performance-based. Social anxiety is getting attached to an outcome, right? So I'm coming to this social... No, it's completely fine. Yeah. No worries. No, not at all. I love cats. I'm a cat guy. Tried to adopt two. And then there's like this whole process for adopting them. You needed to be interviewed. Oh. I thought, I just wanted some cats. I had to go through cats, I had to fill out this form and like do an interview. And then right before my interview, they gave them to someone else. But what were we talking about? Oh yeah. Social anxiety is you get attached to an outcome. So I say, this social situation has to go this way. Okay? This podcast has to go well. Mo, Alex, and all his viewers have to think I'm really smart and think I'm super intellectual and an amazing therapist, and they want to follow me on Instagram, they want to book a session, they want to give me their money, yada, 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 yada. You get attached to an outcome, and then because you're so attached to that outcome, it's a performance, and you're very aware during the interaction whether you're making progress towards that outcome or not, and so this anxiety comes flooding in. But when you let go of your attachment to the outcome, you can have a desired outcome. I want this to go well. But when you don't need it to go well, then there's less anxiety, right? So I'd say you came to therapy, your preference was probably that I didn't think you were a pussy and that I respected you and liked you, which I do, by the way. Okay, but you didn't need that to happen. And because you didn't need that to happen, you didn't have to play a bunch of games and dance around and pretend like you weren't in pain. You could just get right to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like what we were talking about earlier with dating, or being intimidated by a beautiful woman. If your whole self-worth is tied up on when that hot girl you go on one date with, whether she likes you or not, there's a lot on the line and you should be anxious. And so you're attached to an outcome. This has to go well. She has to like me. She has to think I'm interesting. She has to want to have sex to me. You become an anxious mess. But when you go there and you go, I would like for all those things to happen, but there's a possibility none of that stuff happens. And if it does, I'm still going to wake up and make my podcast and do what I do and have a more or less good life. Then there's less anxiety. Yeah. I don't remember what we were talking about at the start.
No, that's great. And one thing, dude, I want to say is, this is I'm doing a little detour here, but I think the greatest pain in this world is relationships and situationships and starting to get to know someone, getting close to someone, becoming intimate. You start dating, and then you break things off.
Yeah.
Exactly what I did. And I came to you. I remember in the midst of my time going through it, and that was the time I came and saw you. I remember thinking, I was at home and I had seen something. I'm not going to bring her name. I'm not going to say anything, but I had gone on her social media, and I told you about this, where, she was having a good time, whatever. The feeling it gave me, it literally felt, I was thinking to myself, I would rather be dead than be feeling this.
Yeah.
It's just such a profound, visceral, it's just, it makes, I could walk, and so I do boxing.
Yeah, good.
And I remember the next day, I went and my buddy trains me.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, in that moment when I was going through that pain, I was willing to fight Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to die.
Yeah.
I'm ready. Yeah. If you have a pro fighter right there and he said he wants to spar you, Mo, and he'll kill me, knock me out in 20 seconds, I'll do it. I don't care.
What do you think it was about that experience that was so painful?
I think it's just not being good enough and just losing someone. Even though that person was not the right person for me and was actually toxic for me. It's just the feeling of losing something.
Yeah. What I found is a lot of people are more devastated by the ending of a situationship than they are a long-term committed loving relationship. And I have a bit of a theory on why that is, but here's kind of like a pattern I've seen in a lot of people, more common in men. I call it the goddess experience. That's kind of what I've coined it, okay? And so at some point usually around your mid-20s, a young man who presents quite confidently but has some deep insecurities that he might not even be aware of will find himself romantically involved with a woman who he considers to be out of his league. And while he's with her, it'll kind of sway between bliss and anxiety. So he'll be infatuated with her and can't believe that he got a girl like this. But the whole time he's terrified because he knows he's going to get rejected at some point because she's out of his league and he doesn't feel as though he's actually a match for her. He just got lucky or something like that. And so his time with this sort of woman is always short-lived. It's always a few dates or a couple months kind of thing because he's not seeing her as she actually is, right? And so it's not going to work out. And when it inevitably doesn't work out, it's like the floodgates open and every ounce of insecurity and self-loathing and shame that guy has ever had, but that he's been buffered from, will come bursting through. And he'll get more anxious and more depressed than he's ever been in his whole life. He'll get more depressed than he was when a long-term loving relationship ended, right? Because it's this hot girl or this goddess who's the pinnacle of whatever he's built her up to be in his mind. She's now rejected him, and that makes him feel worthless, right? But when that happens, it's easy for me to say, but I say, good, that needs to happen. Because all that insecurity and self-loathing and shame is in that guy, whether he feels it or not. Mm. And so the only way to move through it is for it to come to the surface and be brought up. And so it absolutely has to happen. It's just very overwhelming when it does.
It's painful, dude.
It's
painful, dude. And I can see why some men would fall into this dark place of alcohol, drugs, even killing themselves.
I wrote this thing once. I said, pain makes you either more conscious or more unconscious. Okay, so something happens, a breakup, rejection, some terrible, awful thing, and there's a ton of pain. And you either become more conscious, meaning it's the catalyst for growth. You reflect on it, you heal, you evolve, you grow into the person you need to become because of that pain, or you become more unconscious, meaning you revert back and you fall back on your coping mechanisms and your default settings. You go, all women are bitches, and all the girls in Vancouver, da-da-da-da-da, and you go and you play a bunch of video games and you do a bunch of coke or whatever it is you do to cope, and you fall back into that, right? And so painful experiences like the one we're talking about are very fragile, and they can go either way.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, for a lot of guys, it just destroys them, and they might never take them a very long time.
You know what was, for me, I mean, one thing that I knew was going to happen, like I could predict the future when I first ended it with this person.
Mm-hmm.
I knew, because I had gone through this before, I knew there was going to be a grieving process. I knew I was ready for it.
Yeah.
And that was the part I was scared of.
I would say you knew it wasn't, this is just my thing, you knew it wasn't going to work out from the very beginning. That would be my...
Very, very early on. Very early.
Yeah, I would say you could sense that. It probably wasn't a thought going through your head, although it might have been. That's the anxiety part. That's what I'm talking about with the goddess experience. So, you're with this woman, and in some ways it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to you. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, you're cuddling in bed, and it's this amazing special time. But there's this lingering anxiety because something in you knows it's not going to work, or it's not the right fit. And so it's this weird experience for men, because it's like it's a bipolar experience of bliss and anxiety. Yeah.
And then one thing men try to do, and I've heard a lot of the guys around me say this, is that you try to change that person into the person you want them to be. You build this person up into what you want that person to be for you, but deep down inside they are who they are, and they're never going to be who you want them to be. But you keep trying to manipulate the situation by doing things or saying things or trying to even convince them, even telling them, hey, this is what I like, this is what I want.
I call that infatuation. You get infatuated by someone. What that means to me is you get attached to someone and you kind of know them, but you don't really actually know them. So there's this empty space. You know a bit about them. You have some chemistry. You get a glimpse into them, right? And there's this empty space of all that you don't really know. And your mind fills that empty space with your fantasies and your desires. and what you want them to be. And so you end up getting attached to the idea of the person, and they're inevitably not your idea. They're not your fantasy, right? And so you're relating to this person in a certain way, and they're not that. And then, so there's this tension between who you think they are or who you're attached to and the reality of who they are. Yeah.
And I think the toughest part of ending it was that battle between, my God, she is beautiful in my eyes physically, but I could play the tape forward 5-6 months down the line. If I were to stay with this person for that much longer, I'm gonna lose my shit. I can't do it.
So I would say that's what I was talking about earlier. It's one thing to have intellectual understanding of ourselves, self-awareness, or our attachment issues. It's another thing to actually embody that self-awareness or that understanding. So you made a decision, even though there's a part of you that probably didn't want to make that decision.
Oof, it was tough, right? Dude.
And so you started to act in a different way. You started to make choices and make decisions that were contrary to they were different from what your attachment issues wanted you to do. And you didn't immediately reap the rewards of that. In fact, it was very difficult for you. But that's the start of you shifting, of you changing. That's how people transcend their issues. It's not, oh, I read a great book and boom, I no longer have an anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or mommy or daddy issues, right? It's in real life, in these situations, you're conscious enough to have some sense of what's going on, and then you make choices that are in the direction of your best interest.
I hear you, man. One thing I wanted to talk about, and it's after ending it, I was a little excited about what I was going to feel like after, because one thing I want to say, and for people that are listening, people know I'm an emotional guy. And I'll say it firsthand. I am an emotional guy. I feel things 10x. So whether that's sadness, depression, love, happiness, 10 times.
Yeah.
But people don't realize that there's a whole other side of it where I feel anger, rage, fear 10x too.
Yeah.
So I remember telling you this in one of this, I think I told you this, after going through that, I felt like Spider-Man turning into Venom. Or was it you I told? I told you, it was you I told. And maybe I told you, but I felt like it was like Spider-Man when Venom took him over him. It was like this dark, venomous demon power. Not good, toxic, but it was like this anger, like, oh, like nothing can get him. I literally felt that King Kong himself could come at me and I will stand toe to toe with him and not be afraid to die. Essentially, I didn't necessarily think I could take King Kong and beat him, but I don't care anymore.
Well, I'd say it's a lot easier to be angry than it is to be sad. When we feel sad, we feel weak and small. And when we feel angry, we tend to feel empowered. Okay? So I think a lot of times people, I don't know if they do this consciously, but in a period where they feel sad and hurt and weak, all of a sudden anger will show up. And their anger is in proportion to the sadness or the hurt that they feel, right? Like, this is somewhat related, and this doesn't apply to you. I don't think people with an avoidant attachment, I don't think guys with an avoidant attachment hit women. I think guys with an anxious attachment hit women because they're afraid and they feel weak and they feel small and they feel threatened and scared that she's going to leave him leave them. And then they snap and that fear turns into anger. And then they do something stupid like give their girlfriend a black eye. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so I think not all the time, but a lot of times fear and hurt and feeling small and anger go hand in hand. Anger can be called a secondary emotion, right? So some primary emotion comes up, shame, sadness, and then anger comes in to buffer you from the more painful primary emotion. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe that's what was going on. I don't know.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. Felt good. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. It feels good. Anger is very seductive. It's way more, I don't know if it's good or right or not, but it's way easier to be angry than it is to be sad. To be a sad little boy. It's easier to be an angry,
Yeah.
violent man. And so that's why I think a lot of men go down that path. I don't know how conscious they are of these things. Again, I think these are just, some people are, but for most people, these are just processes that are unfolding internally that they're not really self-aware of.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's sustainable. I mean, you can't.
No.
I'm not mad at you.
When your system's that overloaded or that flooded with emotion, depression will soon follow. You can't live in a state of heightened anxiety or anger or sadness for too long. There's too much cortisol. There's too much adrenaline. The system is overloaded. So something in there goes, we're shutting things down. And boom, you shut down. And you're not flooded with emotion anymore, but your emotional range is like this. And you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. And you don't feel much. And you have no energy or motivation or vitality or sex drive or these sorts of things, right?
One thing, dude, I want to go back on, and I don't know if you have some sort of solution to this, but like the whole social anxiety being attached to an outcome. Do you think you get over that by going through experiences of just continuous disappointment and pain until one day you just surrender to the fact that nothing really even matters. Like nothing really matters. I mean, one thing that I've started to feel ever since I've gone through these multiple things that I've told you about, I've taken the weight of what's this episode going to be like?
Yeah.
What's this podcast going to be like?
Good.
Am I going to be able to...
You've detached from the outcome.
Yeah, and
you still have a preference for an outcome. You still want it to go well.
I just don't have... I would say I just don't have the energy to care anymore, man.
That was your path, let's say, until you exhausted yourself to the point that you got it. Your perspective started to shift. The simplest advice I can give for social anxiety is a form of self-obsession. Okay? You're too focused on you, right? It's how am I being perceived? What is Mo thinking about me? What's my hair like? All this sorts of stuff. So you're having a social interaction, but you're not actually listening. You're not actually paying attention to the other complicated, interesting human being in front of you. It's all about you. And so for people with social anxiety, the simplest thing they can start to do, and it's not a magic trick that's going to cure their social anxiety overnight, but put your damn attention on the other person. Like, I'm focused on you right now, right? There's a TV right there with a picture of me in my face. I have no attention on it. I do now that I've talked about it, but, my attention is on you. And when your attention is external on the situation or the other human being, and you're being responsive and receptive to that person, you become less socially anxious. But just to reiterate, social anxiety is a form of self-obsession, not a narcissistic self-obsession. I'm not saying people with social anxiety are these arrogant, narcissistic assholes or anything, but you're too focused on you. Yeah.
How does a self-obsession come about? How does someone become socially anxious and then become...
Probably early on, during a time like puberty, where social interactions and social comparisons are the most important thing in a kid's life. They probably had some negative experiences in which some social situations didn't go very well, right? And so there's a wound there. Okay, so think of this. Imagine I poke you in the shoulder and you're not wounded. It's just a poke. You don't feel it much. You don't even have to think about it. It's just, okay, you brush it off. But imagine you are wounded there and it's infected and scabbing over, and I apply that same poke. You're really going to feel it. It's going to hurt. You're going to have a big reaction to it. You're going to think about it. You're going to obsess about it. It's going to be hard for you to pay attention to anything other than that wound. So people get wounded emotionally, okay? Mm-hmm. And so let's say you or someone else has some social experiences or some experiences early on, bullying, girls not liking you, whatever. And so there's some wounds there. And so life comes around and gives you a poke, a podcast that doesn't go that well, you talk to a hot girl at the gym and she's already got a boyfriend, but you're not sure if she's lying or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a poke, but it's where it's poking you. Yeah. And so you're having this strong emotional reaction. And so I think people, this is a generalization, but people with social anxiety tend to have a lot of wounds that are associated with social interactions or not being good enough, sort of thing. And so a normal everyday social interaction for them has the potential to make them so reactive that they're anxious about it, and they feel they have to protect themselves, or they have to overcompensate or overperform, or these sorts of things. And then they struggle to just relax and have a damn conversation with someone. So I don't know if I provided a solution or whatnot, but for you, it seemed to work to start to picture that the little boy you once were, to picture that punk 12-year-old Mo. You know, what did you look like again? Remind me. Like, what did 12-year-old Mo look like?
Little chunky, sweaty braces.
Yeah, chunky, sweaty Mo. I remember the first thing I asked you is, say, how do you feel about that guy?
And you made me do a little practice right there. You told me to look beside you and picture that 12-year-old Mo and tell him how much you love him and how much you care about him.
But you didn't love him.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
It was tough, man.
I don't know if I explicitly told you to love him, because my hunch was that you didn't love him. But I remember asking how you felt about him. It was very clear you did not like that boy, right? And so you have this part of yourself that presents as social anxiety or whatever, okay? And so not only do you have that problem, but you have the problem that you fucking hate that part of yourself, right? And so you're a house divided. And so the work was for you to start to support that part of it yourself in a way that would get those symptoms to calm down. But as long as you're too busy hating 12-year-old little Mo, the guy who got bullied, the guy who the hot girls didn't like, right? Those symptoms that were interfering with your 28-year-old life were never going to go away. Yeah. The key is the image. This is what I tell clients. It's like, look at a picture of yourself at that age. Let it sink in. Because when you're getting triggered, it's like chaos. And you want to turn chaos into order. So it's just, oh my God, I'm triggered. I'm anxious. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to do. But when you go, oh, that little boy is scared. That little boy is getting triggered. And you hold the image of him in your mind's eye, you're turning chaos into order. What you're really doing, this is a little technical, but you're taking a right brain hemisphere experience, being triggered, a raw emotion, and you're making it a left brain hemisphere experience. You're conceptualizing it, okay? You're going, oh, I know what's going on right now. I was bullied at 12 years old, and now I have these kind of wounds or these insecurities about social interactions. And something's happening right now that's triggering that part of me, okay? And so you hold the image of the boy, and it's kind of like you have a map now for that experience. And that doesn't immediately make your anxiety go away, but it's a lot better than, I'm just anxious, I don't know why, what the fuck is going on here kind of thing, right? And then you can start to say, what does this boy need right now? What can I do to help this guy out? And he might answer. He might give you a literal answer of something you can do in that moment to help him out. He might not. But in asking the question, you're starting to relate to that part of yourself in a more supportive way. What I would say is you're automatically kind of taking on the spirit of the father or the cool older brother who's looking out for that boy. I'd say women are really good at this with the little girl, dealing with their little girl. They intuitively understand it. And we'll go in there and ask it what it needs and work with it and calm it down. Men hate it. Men go, what the fuck? You know,
I hate every bit
men
of it.
feel, again, back to not feeling like a pussy. When you start talking about a little boy, men will cringe, or they'll this or they're that.
I was cringing at that little 12-year-old boy. It wasn't Mo. It was a greasy, fat, overweight, sweaty 12-year-old. It wasn't, even though it was Mo.
That's exactly right. It's part of you. It's just, you don't want to own it, or you didn't want to own it. It doesn't fit with the identity of this good-looking 28-year-old who's got a podcast and going on dates with hot girls. He doesn't want to have a sweaty
12-year-old boy part of
little
him.
boy who gets bullied in him. It doesn't fit with his image. And so he's disowned that part of himself. Carl Jung would say that's your shadow then, the parts of you that you're not owning. Okay? You've disowned it and you've pushed it to the side. But guess what? That's not a very effective strategy, because he still pops up. And so what you have to do is own it, and more than own it, you have to examine your relationship with it. And if it's an unhealthy one, which yours definitely was, you have to start to improve that relationship. Like, I have a pouty little 9-year-old boy in here. And it doesn't show up that often, but it's usually when, if I'm attached to a woman and at some point she'll reveal to me that I'm not the center of her universe, that I'm not, whatever, that I'm not God's gift to women or something like that. That pouty little 9-year-old boy starts to pout. And what would happen in my 20s is I would become that little boy. Okay? I would start to act like a 9-year-old little boy. And guess what? That didn't go very well for trying to have a relationship with a 27-year-old woman. Right? So that guy's still in there. So what happens now is when I get triggered or something happens, I'm aware of it. I know what's happening. I say, oh, there's the little boy. And I go, how you doing today, little boy? And he goes, not very good. And I go, what's wrong? And he'll give an answer. She doesn't want to come over tonight. And I'll go, buddy, she came over 3 nights in a row already. She goes, she should want to come over every night. I go, that's a little bit unrealistic. And he goes, too bad. I go, okay, what do you want to do about it? He goes, I want to unfollow her on Instagram and never talk to her again. I go, whoa, calm down, buddy. That's I don't know if that's the way we should handle it. It sounds corny or whatever, but it's just this little dialogue with this part of yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And in doing that, you don't become that part. That part's not driving the car and trying to navigate your adult life. Mm-hmm. So that's different than, oh, I overcame all of my attachment issues. I destroyed the little boy. I'm perfect now. I'm all good to go. That's not realistic, I don't think. Also, that little boy is creative, and he's funny, and he's a troublemaker. Mm-hmm. So there's good qualities to him, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I was talking about earlier. 12-year-old Mo started the podcast. Yeah. 12-year-old Mo is the one who went through the experiences that's able to have this conversation right now, or to have this conversation with a therapist who was on Theo Vaughn's podcast. If it weren't for 12-year-old Mo, you wouldn't be doing these things. Yeah.
Oh, man. Life and the progression. It's
where did that cat go?
It's fun, man. And Alex actually has a question.
All right. You. Lay it on me.
So, typically boys are bullied by other boys.
Yeah.
Why would young girls bully boys? Do they do it for the same reasons? That's a complex question.
I like it. I don't know if I have a great answer, but I'll say a little something about bullying. Okay. Maybe it will kind of sort of answer the question. I think the way in which boys bully each other or get bullied is they test each other's level of sensitivity. So they chirp each other, they make fun of each other sort of thing, and they're waiting to see if they react. And if you react and you cry or you be dramatic, they pounce on you. And they continue bullying. If they chirp you and you say fuck you back, or you come up with some witty response, or you show that they haven't gotten under your skin, you're fine, right? And so the sensitive boys, the ones who react, get bullied the most. Is that making sense? Mm-hmm. And then so that, I believe, in some sense, starts the process of emotional repression. I used to be a teacher, and I used to work in elementary schools. You could see it. Boys do this from a very young age, right? And so little boys start to learn that my sensitivity, my emotional reactions will get me in trouble, will get me kicked out of the tribe, will make it so I'm not liked, sort of thing. And so I think the process of emotional repression, or being at war with your emotions, or not liking your sensitivity or whatever, starts from an incredibly young age. I think by the time we get into adulthood, we have so many defense mechanisms, and our emotional repression is so unconscious and automatic, we don't even realize we're doing it. Huh. Here's a great quote. I don't know where I heard this, but it says, the body whispers, and if you don't listen to it, it starts to scream. Okay, and so I find that quote applies more to men. So what I see a lot of is men coming to therapy, and they're not even really aware that what the problem is or what's going on, but their body has gotten out of control. They're having panic attacks, or they have insomnia, or some intense thing is going on in their body that they can no longer ignore, right? Is this making sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it's like their body is screaming at them to give it some attention, to unpack what's going on, to examine their life in some manner. Mm. Yeah.
Wow. Why do the bullies get drawn to sensitive boys? Once someone becomes sensitive, is it just?
I don't know. I don't know if it's human nature. It's a little cynical, but it definitely seems to happen because I don't know. If you bully someone and they don't give you a reaction, it's not that fun. I remember there was a girl, I feel awful about this, but there was a girl in our grade 5 class, and she had a real tough go of it. She was from foster homes and stuff like that. So she had a tough childhood. But if you just gave her the middle finger, she'd cry. And because she would cry, we would give her the middle finger. And so every time she'd look over, we'd just give her the finger, and she'd burst into tears. If she looked over and we gave her the middle finger and she didn't cry, nothing happened, that would have been the end of it. I don't know why we do it, you know.
Dude, now that you bring it up, I do remember there was a few girls in my grade 5 class that were more savage than the boys.
Oh, girls bully. Girls typically bully through reputation damage, right? Like boys, it tends to be more explicit, calling you things to your face kind of thing, or physical and violent. Girls bully each other through reputation damage, slut shaming, or at younger ages.
Yeah.
But that sort of stuff.
And more physical, like they're very to the point. Like we had a kid in our elementary class that had eczema all over his body.
So
he had really
the worst.
He had really it was very noticeable skin that was damaged. And man, I remember these 3 girls were always like, ew, I don't want to stand beside him. What's wrong with his skin? Like they would just say that. And
so brutal, yeah.
At a young age, at that age, we even were like, whoa. And dude, I remember okay, so can I tell you a story?
Please do.
I was a chunky, sweaty kid, and for some reason, I had neck hair. You know when young kids have like more neck hair?
Oh, I still have that.
But like
I have to buzz my neck,
right?
Like once a
week. But here's the thing: mine would like kind of like it would stick to my skin because I was sweaty, so it would be like tentacles down my neck.
Oh yeah.
And I remember this one, a motherfucking bitch, man. She said to me, and I don't know, I was in line. You know what? We were standing in line. Her friend was standing beside me, and she was standing behind her, and she thought I couldn't hear her, and she said, ew, why is Mo's hair on his neck just like sticky? Why does Mo have hair on his neck?
Yeah.
And dude, I remember it ruined my day. It ruined my day completely. I mean, I went home and I felt a shell of myself. I kept looking at myself in the mirror. I kept like touching myself, and it was...
I think we, like as an adult, we look back on these things. And so 28-year-old Mo looks back at 10-year-old Mo and what happened there. And we see it through the 28-year-old's lens. And we go, yeah, it was tough. And oh, it's kind of whatever. And I think we lose touch with how actually difficult those experiences are when you're 10. You know, like it's so common for people in therapy to have been bullied or something like that. Like we forget when you're 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on, it's like there is nothing more important to you than what your peers think about you.
Nothing
what
more.
The girls think about you, what the guys think about you, sort of thing. And then you're jammed into this building every day for 7 hours, you know, and you have class and you have PE where you're wearing weird shorts, and some people have gone through puberty and some people haven't. And then in high school, some people have had sex and some people haven't, sort of thing. And so you're having all these intense social, you know, experiences, and there's this social hierarchy, and you're very aware of where you fit in it, and it fucks with people. And then they grow up and to become an adult, and they kind of forget about it, you know, and they write it off as, oh, it was part of my childhood, not that big of a deal. And then something happens in their adult life and it triggers that and it brings up that old pain, and they have to go back and kind of examine, go, wait a minute, maybe it was a big deal. Maybe I'm still carrying some of that with me. Yeah.
Do you want to? Can I tell you a day in my elementary that basically summarizes all my trauma?
Yeah, go for it.
It's looking back on it now, it's funny as all get out, but it's in that moment I have never felt more embarrassed in my life.
Yeah.
So just to give you a little context, like I was never the kid that was good with the girl. Like I've told you this before, I was just a sweaty fat kid that had braces, and I played basketball. I always wore my Bengals shirt.
Yeah.
You know, and I would pepper in conversation here and there, and I would be witty and funny at times, but it would sometimes it would stick, sometimes it wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was sitting beside one of, you know, the popular hot girls, because we had desk arrangements every like month or two, right?
Yeah.
And I got put beside this hot girl. I was like, yes. Every morning I would walk in, I'd say, okay, this is the day I like, you know, I can like charm her, and this is the day I'll get her to like me, right? So early on in the morning, we get in. I'm talking to her. I'm peppering some conversation. It's not landing.
Yeah.
Okay. She's giving me these looks. She's not really having it. 12-year-old Mo is thinking that's or I think it was 11. 11-year-old Mo thought it wasn't happening, but it might have been. I don't know. So I'm already like in my head. I'm like, fuck, it's not happening. Okay, tomorrow's a new day. I'll try back tomorrow. But I knew that day we had to go. We had PE because on certain days we had PE, certain days we didn't. And I knew we were playing hurly-burly, which is handball.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was good at handball. Like that was my moment where I could be like,
yeah,
you know, this is my moment to charm her and be like the alpha, you know, of the class. Like this is
to be on top of the dominance hierarchy.
Exactly. Yeah. This is my moment, right? So we go into the gym, we go into the PE, and we're playing, right? It's like near the end of PE and we're playing hurly-burly. I'm doing decent, right? And I get hip checked by one of the popular kids, right? And I just fucking hit the deck, like boom. And I'm a thick kid, so it rattled the like gym, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's laughing at me, and I'm just this monkey in the middle, and everyone's just looking at me, all eyes on me, and they're all laughing, right? So now I'm thinking, okay, I need to get this kid back. I can't let this slide, because especially I'm trying to impress the popular girl, and I just got
Sorry, do you see how that ties into the girl in your adult life that we were talking about earlier? The popular girl, the hot girl, the princess, the one you can't get. Anyways, keep going. Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure she liked him, so I was like, oh motherfucker, this is not happening. I can't go out like this. Yeah. So the whole match, the rest of the match, I'm dialed in to fuck this guy up. Just give him a bow or like deck him into the walls. I'm so focused on him. I remember I was running and I was like, this is my moment. My buddy threw a pass to me and I'm not even looking at the ball. Like I'm not even focusing on the game anymore. The ball smokes me in the head, and as that's happening, like simultaneously, I trip over my own feet.
Yeah.
And I just hit the deck again. Now, I'm in physical pain now. Like my bottle's already full. It's tipping over, right? Like I've just throughout the whole day, me talking to her during class and it not landing, and then this guy decking me and everyone laughing at me, I'm already at my limit. Now, this puts me over the edge where I get hit in the face with the ball, and as that's happening, I'm already falling over.
Yeah.
I hit the deck. Now, my emotions are so high that I also forgot to bring a spare shirt, and I left it in my backpack back in class.
Yeah.
I run back to the class, and there was only like a few minutes left in class until PE was over, and then it was lunch. I was like, fuck it, I'm running into class and changing my shirt in there. Now, I don't know if you remember, but in elementary, like there was the classroom, and then there was like a wall where everyone put their backpacks.
Yep.
Okay. And I wasn't going to use the locker room. I wasn't going to go back to the gym to use the locker room to change my shirt. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to change my shirt in the classroom. So I have to take my shirt off. Okay. I'm going to be shirtless.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, what are the chances one of the hot or popular girls walks in and sees me without my shirt off? Now think, I'm self-conscious about my body. I'm a thick, sweaty kid, right? I'm taking my shirt off, and it's a 10-second process just to take my shirt off and put my spare shirt on. I hear footsteps. I'm like, oh, fuck no. Don't tell me this can't be it. I see one of the hot girls walk in. She sees me with my shirt off, and she goes, ah! Dude, my initial reaction, now I'm at a place of I got to do something. This is instinctual, animal type. I go like this. Ah! Ah! Like a fucking ape. I'm like, ah! And as I'm doing that, I start leaking.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, how insecure was I? I didn't even know what to say. I was cornered because my backpack was in the corner and there was a wall. I'm with my shirt off. She sees me. She goes, ah! I growl at her like an ape. And as I'm doing that, I start leaking out of my eyes.
It reminds me what you said earlier about how you had this period after this relationship with a woman ended where you compared yourself to Spider-Man or something?
Venom, yeah.
Yeah, so this anger, this primitive energy kind of came in, and I suggested that that was a response to shame or feeling worthless or these sorts of things. And that story you just told me to me is a microcosm of that, or captures that in one moment.
One moment, yeah.
There's shame, there's feeling of worthlessness, there's tears coming down your eyes, and there's this response of anger or aggression or something like that. Hey? But yeah, the system was so overloaded with emotion that it just
dude, to this day, like,
came out in different forms. It came out in the forms of tears. It came out in the forms of growling and whatnot. But
yeah, I mean, it was just.
Can really, the more I get to know you, you can really start to. I hope you're gaining a nuanced understanding of your kind of experiences and how they've set you up. You know, I think the hot girl is a theme that keeps coming up for you. It comes up for a lot of guys too. I don't think it's any coincidence that's who you're drawn to in your 20s. I don't think that's who you're going to be wind up with. I'm sure whoever you wind up with will be beautiful. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think you will view your eventual partner as the hot girl. I think that's a rigged game that you're never going to win because a 12-year-old's trying to win it. Am I making sense? Yeah. But there's this idea of the hot girl, the myth of the hot girl, the one you sat next to in class, okay? The one that saw you take your shirt off and you started crying, you know, the one that you dated briefly a few months ago or whatever that was, that was, am I allowed to talk about this?
Sure.
Yeah, that seemed quite emotionally unavailable and liked you, but didn't actually want you at the same time, sort of thing, and stirred up all these sorts of feelings. And so the theme of the hot girl is quite present in your life. And that's where your work is, or that's where your growth will be. No, it won't be in acquiring the hot girl or possessing the hot girl that you grow and evolve. What do you think of what I just said?
I have nothing to disagree with on that.
Okay.
I have everything to agree with.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? The first time we ever had an episode, me telling that story, I wouldn't be able to.
You've come a long way. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
And I say it proudly now. Like, I tell that story proudly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that did happen. Yeah, I did get bullied. Yeah, I didn't get I was sweaty. You know what I mean?
There's this type of therapy I'm learning about right now and I'm really into. It's called emotion-focused therapy. And it came up by this cool British guy or Australian, I don't even know what, but Leslie Greenberg. And he has a little saying where he says, you can't leave a place until you first arrive there. And so I think our insecurities are like that. I think young men go to great lengths to buffer themselves from their insecurities. And they do that by getting big biceps, and they do that by having excessive amounts of casual sex, and they do it in a million different ways. But they never get in touch with their insecurities until they get triggered. They never really feel the depth of them. And until they do that, they can't get past them, right? And so something has to happen in their life where they feel the depth of their own insecurity, and then they have to own it and take a look at it and actually be with it and say, yeah, that's there. That's part of me, before they can get to the other side of it. And that's what's starting to happen with you. You know, when we first met, you were an open book, don't get me wrong, but I could tell your relationship to the little boy or whatever we want to call it was a very negative one. You didn't like that stuff. And you don't even have to really like it, to be honest. Like, I don't like my flaws, but I can accept, I'm somewhat okay that they're there, that they're a part of me. And that frees me up a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Slowly but surely. And I thank you, dude. You're a very, very good therapist.
Oh, thanks.
You're
Yeah,
top-notch, man.
you're a good client.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm
Alex,
glad.
you're the man over there.
Yeah, Alex.
None of this would happen with you. As I've been doing my social media stuff, I realize how absolutely useless I am at just. I don't edit or anything like that, but I hire my buddy to do it.
No, dude.
And it's just a part of it that I am so incompetent with. And so when someone can come along and actually put this stuff together, and I don't have to think about it, and I can just think about whatever it is I want to say.
It's a blessing.
It's an absolute blessing.
It is. Yeah.
And people who are good at that stuff are invaluable.
Yeah.
Because people who aren't good at that, you know, like I'm really not good at that technology stuff. And so when someone comes along and they just get it and they're natural with it, it's incredible to me.
There's no chance this would happen. I mean, literally it wouldn't happen without my man over here. Ooh. So, dude, thank you, man. I mean, it's always good talking to you.
Yeah, let's do it again soon.
I'm happy to see your IG, like your followers. I had a tab on it. I was like, oh yeah, yes.
I'm a social media influencer.
Yes, dude. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna beat Gen Z at their own game. Yeah, that's good. Okay, guys, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah. Aaron, episode 95.
Good Lord.
Enjoy your 24.
Good Lord.
Peace.